Greetings, this is Artie from Artifact Electronics. This episode is part 2 of the Asteroids Deluxe repair. I'm sure some of you have watched the last episode, which showed the diagnostics and partial repair, including the monitor. But there's a few more things to take care of, and we'll try to attend to those in this episode. Here's the original flyer. This, of course, is the full-size upright. They also made a mini cabaret version and a cocktail version. And wouldn't it be nice to own all three? Oh well, you can always dream. But let's go ahead and see what else needs to be done before we can fire it up and see the monitor working inside the cabinet. One of the issues I felt compelled to take care of very quickly, even though we lived dangerously last time, and that was a power cord. What had happened here is the AC hot wire had separated from the connector inside, so that's why the whole thing didn't work at all. I temporarily soldered it back to the connector, put it back in its shell so we could power up the game. But this power cord needs to go. It is frayed pretty badly near the strain relief. And of course, they cut the ground lug off. And I think, if you remember, the problem was described to me that the machine worked fine until they were in a heavy thunderstorm and the machine just quit, most likely caused by a lightning strike nearby or whatever power surge that caused. But in my opinion, if they still had the ground plug on here, this may have mitigated the situation and provided a place for the surge to at least partially escape. But since we were isolated from ground completely, it just went through the system and did some damage, even though it looks like 2 of the fuses were blown, and they gave their lives for a worthy cause, because I'm sure they protected the system from a lot worse damage that could have happened. Here is the new power cord, and one of the things I fought with a lot when repairing things is removing strain relief plugs. And one thing I discovered: always buy the right tools to do the job right. It's a very cheap piece of equipment. I paid $6 for this on eBay, and it's called strain relief pliers. And what you do with these, yeah, I know some of you are just poo-pooing it because you've had one of these in your toolbox for the past 25 years, but I haven't. I would always tool around with these things with pliers and all sorts of implements to get them out. With this thing, you just kind of grab it and squeeze and pull it out the other end. And it's very easy and very clean to do that sort of work. Highly recommended. No, I didn't get any money for this. I just paid my $6 on eBay. But of course, the nice thing is we now have a brand new ground plug, and the electrical hookup should now be perfect. Next we get to the self-diagnostics, which kept beeping at me. 2 high and 1 low. And the funny thing was, it was totally intermittent, because sometimes the machine would turn on, it would cycle through that error beep sequence 1 or 2 times, and then the game, well, then it would stop doing it and the lights would start blinking, meaning that the the CPU had successfully booted. Once or twice I turned on the game and it came up immediately, but most of the time it would just sit there forever in the beeping sequence. I guess it kept retesting whatever it was testing and finding out that it didn't work, and it refused to boot up until that error was taken care of. Even though the reason I'm saying it's intermittent is because once in a while the test passed and it would let the game boot up. So what we're dealing with is a 2114 static RAM chip. It's part of the vector memory. It's a 1K by 4 chip, and I guess it holds all of the vector vertices that are cycled through by the hardware and displayed. And obviously, if there's something wrong with this, you're going to get a lot of strange looking graphics on screen. Now, I told you last time I never got a good display, but I did get one briefly, and I didn't put it on video because I didn't have the camera running, but things just looked, the intensity was super high, all the vertices were connected to each other regardless of whether it was supposed to be a visible line or not. So I don't know if that had something to do with this. I mean, I'm sure we went a long way with repairing the monitor, but let's replace this guy so that if the screen still messes up, we can't blame him anymore. And I just glimpsed something else here, and that is over there. If the stupid thing would focus, almost, not quite, but I don't know, it's being obstinate. Not a big deal, but it looks like one of the bypass caps over here is broken in half. So we're going to take care of this too. And then be on our merry way. Now, to replace this chip, I could try to desolder it, but there's no sense in doing that because obviously this guy is intermittent, or of course some of the support circuitry is, but there's a total of 4 of these guys there, and if the support circuitry was bad, it would tag all of them, but it only tagged this one. And also to not run the risk of damaging any of the traces on the board, I'm just going to cut this chip out. And the way you do it is you take side cutters and you cut the pins as close to the chip itself as you can. And I'm in an awkward position here, so I'm having a hard time doing this. It's actually easier to do the pins that are not in view. I guess my side cutters are too big, but you get the idea, right? There you go. And we just go around the whole chip and cut the pins as close to the body of the chip as possible. So the reason I was having such a hard time with cutting these pins, it's not as if I haven't done this before, but the pins on these chips, the upper part is really wide. There's very little space in between. If you look at this, you can see there's plenty of space to get your side cutters in, but these just have that wide top part, and it takes a bit of finagling to get the cutters in there, but we did, and there we go. So now it's just a matter of heating each pin individually and pulling them out. Let's see. See how easy the pins come out, and you've greatly reduced the chance of pulling traces out. And so you go around the whole chip, pull out all of the remaining legs. Then, of course, you need to suck all the solder out of the holes, put in a socket, and put in a new chip. Everything worked out nicely, and after cleaning it up, we have a near virgin pad set for the replacement chip. And here's our replacement chip. Of course, I will socket this, but two problems. I don't have an 18-pin socket. Actually, one problem. I don't have an 18-pin socket, and that can be easily overcome. Take a 20-pin and trim it. But notice the entire vector memory bus runs underneath the chip. If I put a socket in here, I'm just going to hide all of this. And if at any point during the replacement process we mess up, there's hell to pay, because you got to get the socket out to see if you've nicked anything underneath here. And the way I prevent that is I use SIP sockets like this. These are snappable to any length you want, and you just make your own 18-pin socket out of this with full access to all of the traces underneath. So let me go ahead and do that and see what the end result looks like. And here's what the result looks like. And it clearly demonstrates that you have full access to what's going on underneath the chip. I mean, still part of it is covered, of course, but it's a lot easier to check. If things aren't working, you do a continuity check, and the problems point to something underneath the socket. This will make it a lot easier. So in goes the memory chip, and we're ready to go test. And oh yes, I did replace that cap over here, the bypass cap. So we should be ready to roll. Alright then, after fixing the monitor, which obviously worked, at least on the Asteroids cocktail, I put it back in and put all of the bits and pieces back in place. We saw the mirror. There's a transparent blue overlay over the CRT. There's cardboard side art inside, and of course the front panel over the monitor. And we fixed the board yesterday. Actually, no, that wasn't yesterday. That was a few days ago. But I also tested that in the Asteroids cocktail, and the memory fix seemed to hold. It didn't beep at me, and it booted up. I power cycled it several times, and that seemed to work. So now everything's in the cabinet. Let's have a look, see what happens. Ready to power up. The board's up. It's not complaining. Oh, and I also replaced the starters on the fluorescence, so the marquee lights up. And you can also see there's a black light in there that lights up in the back, gives it more of a 3D effect, which probably doesn't show up too well on the video, but it gives it depth. You definitely feel like the ships and everything are floating in the middle of space rather than being projected onto the background. So no big surprise, it came up. We can see it's showing us the high score table right now. What is different here is that in Asteroids it didn't save the high score table at all. It was in RAM, which went away when you turned off the machine. On this one, they're using an EROM, an electrically alterable read-only memory. Has a capacity of 64 bytes, but they're only saving 3 of the remaining high scores. Well, actually the 3 top high scores when you turn it off. It'll still show while it's on, it'll still collect like up to 10 high scores, but of course you turn the machine off and everything but the top 3 are gone till you turn it on again next time. So other than that, what remains to be done is we have some more cleaning on this. The blacklight tube in the back, I don't know, it's a little weak, it seems to me, but it's working, so we should be okay with that. And again, I just replaced the 2 starters in the assembly and both of them came on and nothing flickers, so we're doing good there. But anyway, what remains to be done is the control panel, which is in pretty bad shape. It's peeling and cracking, and so I have to find a control panel overlay and replace that one. We need locks on the coin door as well as on the back door, which is held in place by a drywall screw right now. New leg levelers. It needs a coin box. Has kind of a weird shaped coin box down there, and which was missing. And I think that will be about it to make it ready to take it inside and put it in the arcade gallery. So how about we play a game? And you can all laugh at me. Okay, this is a bit awkward here because I'm standing behind the camera, but no, I'm not using it as an excuse. I should point out that Deluxe is a somewhat more difficult game than Asteroids, because a lot of people learned on Asteroids to play it for too long, so they made it more difficult here. The saucers shoot a lot more accurately, and there's a couple more surprises that are not exactly in the player's favor. Alright, gotta beat, what, 18,610 to get into one of the top 3 spots on the board. And off we go. Made it through the first stage. Close. Not what I wanted to do. Free guy at 10,000. Small saucers are even more accurate. Missed it by 380 points. But anyway, here you go. It's a fun game. I actually like it more than the original. But then again, this is a newer game, so maybe I'll get tired of this and get back to the other one. So as I was reviewing the gameplay video, the buzz seemed to be pretty pronounced. The buzz started because I think one of the ballasts on the fluorescence is giving up its life, and that along with the AGC on the camera really emphasizes it, so a new transformer and a new camera should take care of that problem. But to sum up what we did, fixed a new power cord, replaced 2 fuses, found a bad capacitor which fixed the monitor, a broken in half bypass cap. I don't think that would have affected anything greatly. A 2114 RAM chip that was sitting acting as a vector RAM memory. And after we replaced it, we were getting warnings, not warnings, but errors when booting up the game, and to varying degrees, and replacing that took care of it. 2 number 47 bulbs that were burnt out in the coin door, and 2 fluorescence starters, which after replacement both lights came on, but obviously we seem to still have a problem with at least one of the ballasts in there. And I previously enumerated a bunch of cosmetic stuff that needs to be done, but the game's working, and it's fun to play, and it's also frustrating as hell to play. Thanks for watching. A thumbs up would be appreciated, and subscribe if you haven't already, and do leave me a comment. I really do enjoy reading those. See you later.